Hello world, what you knowing? Let's get the East of England growing! Sustainably, of course. I'm Mike Rigby, and this is Eastern Promise. Yes, welcome to Eastern Promise, the podcast that explores the full potential of the East of England and shares the good news all over the world. We're chasing the Sunrise Coast this week. That's Suffolk and Norfolk research and innovation on the sustainable energy coast, to be exact. Ian Pease is the all-energy business manager for GENERATE, a partnership of business and political leaders from Suffolk and Norfolk that's driving forward the development of the East of England's renewables industry. I'll be talking to Ian about the huge potential of the region's zero carbon and renewables sector. And finally, is your local high street a quality street? Let's find out together by unwrapping the nutty green triangle of local knowledge that is CROWDSOURCERY. Let's get you up to speed with all the news that's fit to say aloud. First of all, Chris Sargison, CEO of DIS Thetford and District Citizens Advice, has reached out to remind us that, as a trusted, relevant and qualified charity, the DIS Thetford and District Citizens Advice seeks to improve people's lives, support local communities, and enhance the Norfolk economy by providing high-quality advice to anyone who goes to them. They are accredited, impartial, and free! Highly trained volunteers and specialist advisors are available in person and digitally on the high street and in multiple outreach locations to support clients for as long as is necessary. You are not simply referred and forgotten. A cost of living emergency has been declared by a collective of more than 100 Norfolk organisations offering advice and welfare support amid the national economic woes. The challenge is to rapidly gear up to this ever-increasing demand. So, a major volunteer business support recruitment programme is underway to address the loss of volunteers during the pandemic, specifically seeking those with local community awareness and language skills. Volunteering isn't just face-to-face support. Business can provide enormous help, from fundraising for services to donations to community events. There will be a free event next week at the Corn Hall in Diss, a wonderful building I know very well indeed. It's at 2 p.m. on Thursday the 17th of November 2022. Officially, it's the DIS Thetford and District's AGM, but it's also a general update, a networking opportunity, and most importantly, a campaign launch that seeks business owners, leaders and representatives of local groups who might consider supporting DIS Thetford and District Citizens Advice in the months to come in all manner of interesting ways. To find out more, go to www.cadat, that's cadat.org.uk/annual-general-meeting-2022-invite. Well, dash off and find out more. I wish Chris and all the team at the DIS Thetford and District CA a very successful event. Please do go along and see what support you can lend. They are a very worthwhile cause and they do magnificent work. And if you want to hear more from Chris talking about the importance of citizens' advice, go to the Eastern Promise feed on your podcast provider of choice, or go to easternpromise.podbean.com and listen to my interview with him at the Unthank Arms. That's where I interviewed him. You don't need to go to the Unthank Arms to listen, though it is thoroughly recommended. Westminster Wonderment now, and following the launch of its enterprise strategy earlier this year under new CEO Ros Bird, Anglia Innovation Partnership, the organisation that manages the Norwich Research Park, welcomed Jerome Mayhew, MP for Broadland, to the park at the end of October. During his visit, Mr. Mayhew learned about the development and promotion of the Research Park's credentials as a location for high-growth businesses. The Broadland MP also learned about the next phase of the park's expansion and received an update on the latest groundbreaking research being conducted across the park's 4 world-leading research institutes, the UEA and the Norfolk and Norwich University Hospital. That'd make a great pub question. Name the 4 world-leading research institutes on the Norwich Research Park. To return to the matter at hand, the AIP Enterprise Strategy aims to create a community ecosystem on Norwich Research Park that will support spin-out and spin-in companies, and includes entrepreneurship schemes, an early-stage explorer fund, and pre-seed funding plus seed funding. Seed funding. Sounds a lot like the John Innes Centre. Oh, I've given one away. Ros Bird, for whom I have a colossal amount of time, said, "I'm really pleased that Jerome was able to take the time to visit Norwich Research Park to see for himself the enormous potential we have here. Our growth plans are ambitious but realistic, and we have in place an infrastructure proven to create the kind of environment where businesses can thrive. Having such a cluster of world-leading science and research that can be translated into viable businesses is too good an opportunity to miss. Amen to that." Mr. Mayhew added, "Norwich Research Park is a key part of the Norfolk economy and is of significant global importance for the science conducted here. I've been impressed by Ros's ambition for the campus, and Norwich Research Park has so many of the ingredients for success. I look forward to seeing the progress made by the team in delivering their vision, and will make sure my colleagues in Westminster know all about the great work that is done here. Here, here, here." Finally this week, let's leap over to Lowestoft, where businesses on Wapload Road have brightened up a gloomy time for a local community organisation. Lowestoft-based non-profit community organisation Reutilise now has a new lighting system thanks to neighbouring firms RMI Renewables and Anglia Electrical. Reutilise is a volunteer-led, not-for-profit, dedicated to diverting clean waste away from landfill by selling it on as art and craft materials. From their facilities in Wapload Road, Reutilise runs their scrap store and paint reuse network, offering a vast array of arts and craft products for sale at half price or less than the usual mainstream stores. They also offer a free mental health and well-being craft drop-in workshop every week, designed to improve mental well-being through developing hands-on skills in a creative, calming and soothing environment. Reutilise have helped local groups and charities refresh shared spaces and create colourful murals for the community, enable people on a low income to redecorate their homes at low cost, and provided employment, training and volunteering opportunities to build valuable skills and experience. RMI Renewables, an offshore wind service provider of specialist engineering services to local wind farms, had heard that the community organisation's old lighting system had failed, which was making it almost impossible to carry out day-to-day tasks. RMI donated the new internal lighting system to Reutilise, with support from fellow Wapload roadie and electrical engineering company Anglia Electrical, who kindly donated their time to complete the installation of the lights purchased from Jason and Tom at Rexel in Great Yarmouth. Carol Dean, founder of Reutilise, said, "We have been completely overwhelmed by the support and generosity from RMI and Anglia Electrical. Delivering these workshops with such poor lighting was so difficult, we would have had to leave doors open to try and let the light in from other areas. However, our new lights have made such an enormous difference. Here's to a bright future for Reutilise." You may be asking, how can you help Reutilise? Well, you can donate money, cash, cheque or PayPal. Donate materials. If you're a business and you think you have scrap material that can be of use, please get in touch with them. You can donate time. If you have specific skills or just want to get involved, they'd love to hear from you. You can also donate stamps. They can reuse all stamps, new or used, first or second class, from any country. You can also sponsor a place on one of their workshops for someone who could not otherwise afford it. Well done, RMI and Anglia Electrical, and we'll be hearing more about the huge promise the wind industry has for Lowestoft in my chat with Ian Pease of GENERATE, just around the corner on Wild Street. If you want to know more about Reutilise, go to www.re-utilise.com. And that was the news, direct from the Eastern Promise News Centre. You can get in touch and submit your stories to our dedicated news email, newsdesk@easternpromise.site. In the week I'm recording this episode of Eastern Promise, the COP27 climate conference opened in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, with the urgent need to match warm words with firm action. In Ukraine, meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin continues to weaponize energy, and here in the UK, the government is mulling over controversial new oil and gas licences, as Just Stop Oil protesters are stepping up direct action. Other groups of climate change activists are available. Bleak though that may all sound, the East of England is very well placed indeed to offer solutions to these seemingly immense and intractable challenges, as well as sustainably growing our economy and regenerating our places. I journeyed over to Orbis Energy in Lowestoft to meet with Ian Pease, All Energy Business Manager for GENERATE, and I began by asking him, what exactly is GENERATE?
GENERATE is our region's inward investment, energy inward investment brand, and it's a partnership of organisations, local authorities, including Great Yarmouth Borough Council, Norfolk County Council, Suffolk County Council, East Suffolk Council, and the New Anglia Local Enterprise Partnership, and works really closely with organisations like the East of England Energy Group, EAGA, and other stakeholders in the region to really promote that energy opportunity to an international audience of potential investors to explore how they can become involved and look at some of those opportunities in the East of England.
Because I know at the recent Southern North Sea conference at the Norfolk Showground, I remember chatting to Charles McDowell, who's representing the city of Virginia Beach, which is looking at putting a huge, colossal wind farm off their coast. But he was very clear that this is the region that the US is looking to for the technology and for the expertise needed to assemble that wind farm. That must be a hugely exciting opportunity.
Well, it is, and we've worked with colleagues over at Virginia Beach for 2 or 3 years now, and I guess what's interesting there is the expertise that we've built up in the Southern North Sea over many, many years in not just offshore wind, but in gas and marine logistics, are all skills and capabilities that the UK can export to other parts of the world. And the US is a real open door for UK businesses and businesses in the East of England at the moment. So we've got some great examples already with companies like Seajax in Great Yarmouth, who are building a vessel over in the States that will be used to install some of this 30 gigawatts of offshore wind off the East Coast alone. So we're working really closely with Virginia Beach and colleagues over in that US market and the DIT to really share our capability and build our own sustainability through exports, which is so important to the supply chain in the East of England.
I mean, I do really thrilled to have listeners in the United States, particularly in California, but also some on the East Coast, and as well as in Europe and in India. Could you give our listener, wherever they may be found, some idea of how well placed the East of England is for renewables and low carbon technology?
Okay, yeah. I mean, we'll go through it very quickly, but to start with, let's look at offshore wind, for example. So it's fair to say that the East of England and the Southern North Sea were pioneers in offshore wind, and we are now leaders in offshore wind. And as we look forward to the next 20 to 30 years, our place in the UK's and the world's offshore wind is set to expand rapidly. So our first significant offshore wind farm was Scroby Sands, just off the coast of Great Yarmouth, 60 megawatts, and I think it was opened in 2004. So since then we've installed a further 4.6 gigawatts of offshore wind, which amounts to over 1,000 turbines off our coastline in the close proximity of Norfolk, Suffolk and Essex. And as we look forward, that's set to quadruple to something like, well, in the first instance, we've got a 6.5 gigawatt pipeline of projects that have just recently been consented. So projects from Scottish Power, Renewables, EA3, EA1 North, EA2 and Vattenfall's Norfolk, Vanguard and Boreas projects, but also a number of extension projects from Equinor and RW and SSE that are now kind of in the planning process. So offshore wind is significant for us, and our gas sector is still incredibly important. Bacton Gas Terminal handles about 30% of the UK's gas requirements from a combination of southern North Sea gas fields, but also import and export lines from Europe. So our capability in gas is still incredibly important. Onshore renewables, we have a fair share of onshore renewables in terms of solar and commercial scale solar, and again an area that has potential for growth when coupled with things like battery storage and also biomass. So we've been pioneers in many of these technologies, and as we move forward, we've got huge new developments in nuclear with Sizewell C, recent decisions on Sizewell C, an existing power plant in Sizewell B that's been generating since the 80s and looks to continue to help provide that base load of energy. So there's very few other parts of the UK and arguably the world that has that capability and mix of energy from an energy transition perspective, from gas through to clean energy development and all those important things that it brings from an economic development perspective as well.
What you're describing there sounds very much like, exactly like, in fact, the dynamic and collaborative energy ecosystem that's sort of contained within the Generate Energy prospectus here. Do you want to just unpack that for us a bit more?
So we have this heritage in energy, which we've talked about in the past as 60 years of offshore-related energy. And within that, this ecosystem has developed this supply chain that encompasses engineering businesses. But also what's really interesting is a whole load of expertise around research and development and innovation. So organisations in Lowestoft, for example, like CFAS, who have been undertaking marine sciences and marine surveys for over 100 years now. And that's really kind of really important as in terms of our position in terms of this whole sort of circular economy as well. So, but also with universities like the UEA and University of Suffolk and UEA's expertise in climate research, and also from a technology perspective, sometimes we overlook the expertise down in Adastral Park in Ipswich that brings huge amounts of technical expertise and communications that all feed into our sector. So when you roll it all together, you create a really, really exciting environment that offers a range of different careers and expertise as we sort of move into this new energy era.
Yeah, it really is a virtuous circle, I think, of organisations, as if feeding, tech organisations feeding in education, academia, research into climate science. You've got, as you mentioned, batteries, the storage and longevity capability of batteries. So it really is an exciting time and an exciting place to be, to sort of, you feel that kind of, not to, I'm trying not to use the word tailwind, but you kind of feel that sort of energy behind it. Oh God, I've done it again. Now, I think 2004 was the real dawn of this green growth revolution on our coast, and a lot of young people, but not just young people, have been inspired to pursue careers in the energy sector. Again, I say not just young people, because there's quite a vibrant, I think, offer to particularly ex-service personnel with engineering skills. I've met a couple of sort of ex-RAF, for example, with sort of turbine engineering experience. So how can we keep that going and sort of expand that outwards from sort of Lowestoft beyond?
It's a good question. So I think, when you look at this enormous amount of potential we've got moving forward, one of our key challenges is, how do we provide the people to fill those highly skilled jobs? And as you mentioned, the energy sector has always provided, people in our communities with a really high value and sustainable job and opportunities, and our local colleges have really picked up the baton with that and provided programs working with organisations like EAGER and Skills for Energy to really create the right provision to ensure that people have a pathway into the sector. So not just young people, as you mentioned, we've worked really closely with the ex-military and those people transitioning from a career in the military who bring not just the technical skills, but the kind of mindset and the behavioural skills that are really important for our sector as well. So, it's highly safety conscious, it's highly organised and highly disciplined. And all those skill sets that the military bring are really important in the energy sector. So we've worked on programmes that help to kind of transfer those skill sets, which sometimes need a bit of interpretation between perhaps a military environment to an engineering environment. And those skills in mechanical, electrical, instrumentation and control, process engineering, they're all there, and they just need a little bit of tweaking and sometimes a little bit of intervention from our really excellent skills providers in the region to then set these people into long-lasting careers as they move out of the military, but also other sectors as well. So as we transition from fossil fuel-based economy and energy system, those people have very similar skills that can then move into clean energy. And if we haven't talked about hydrogen yet, but hydrogen is a process engineering technology, so it relies on a lot of instrumentation and control and process engineering. And again, the skill sets we have in our gas sector and our food manufacturing sectors and those areas are all ripe for work in alternative and green fuels as we move through.
Yeah, you were sort of rattling through my list of questions before I get there, so I'm going to hang on a minute. So East Anglia 1 is kind of first in a super array of up to 6 projects that could be built over the next 2 decades in the East Anglian zone. Could you sort of flesh out for us what that will look like once it's up and running in terms of the benefits, that will accrue locally, nationally, globally?
Yeah, so if we look at East Anglia 1 as an example, that's over 100 turbines. I think it's something like 714 megawatts of power, and indeed is one of the first big projects, mega projects off our coastline, along with a number of others actually. But if you look at the impact of something like EA1 on Great Yarmouth and Lowestoft, it's arguably significant. In the last, their £25 million O&M base, operations and maintenance base in Lowestoft is an example of the jobs and the investment that these projects bring to our region, not just from a construction point of view. Much of the construction was from the Port of Great Yarmouth, which has the facilities and the deep water and the capability to install a lot of this offshore wind, but also Lowestoft and from an operations and maintenance point of view. So that's a kind of an indicator of what's to come, in terms of the future. So the idea with projects like EA3, which is now commencing, is you have a long pipeline which creates sustainability and creates longevity in terms of not just operations and maintenance, because we're a great region for operations and maintenance, but also for construction and pre-assembly and those other tasks that require lots of people and lots of skills in short bursts. But when you chunk together projects, you create that long-term pipeline, which gives investors confidence in the area as well.
That was the word that was on.
So confidence in our area, to see it as a viable investment location, to help employ people from our local area, to invest in our infrastructure, and to really create those kind of long-term sustainable employment opportunities that, as economic development practitioners, we get really excited about. We really want to see. So
I mean, you bring me on brilliantly to one of my next questions, which is, and I lift. Nobody can see me do this, obviously, but Lowestoft Eastern Energy Facility and Power Park, Lowestoft Eastern Energy Facility, LEAF.
Yeah.
And I sort of read through that as I was prepping for this, and Associated British Ports announcing last year was announcing a sort of 5-year plan for this £25 million investment in rail here, investment in the quay here. What excites me about that, if excited isn't too strong a word, is the potential to raise skill levels and aspirations in this part of the world. What particularly excites you and excites Generate and Suffolk County Council, I suppose, about the possibilities coming off investments like LEAF? And what perhaps if you just want to give a brief, better picture than I already have about what LEAF is, and if you can remember that start of the question, you're doing better than I am.
Yeah, so I suppose LEAF is one of probably a range of really exciting initiatives that Generate are working with and promoting to an international audience. And the Lowestoft Eastern Energy Facility, LEAF, will bring a whole new capability to the region from a marine logistics perspective. As with many industries, as things get bigger and scale up, they need a different approach. And one of the things that LEAF will have is berths for what we call service operations vessels, which are much larger than traditional crew transfer vessels, which may operate on a daily basis. So SOVs will operate on a perhaps a 2-week rotation. We'll have technicians on board and will be restocked, coming into port a lot less often, but require much more space and facilities to maintain. So projects like LEAF will help facilitate that. And again, you mentioned about some of those other projects. We've also got projects in Great Yarmouth, the operations and maintenance campus as well, and enhancements to the outer harbour. So Generate is very much a partnership organisation, and we're there to promote the multiple projects, how we can welcome development and inward investment to our area. And one of the sort of our key messages really to government is we completely understand the levelling up agenda, and but we also need our fair share of that levelling up on the eastern coast in Norfolk and Suffolk. Some of our communities will really benefit from some of those clean energy opportunities, and projects like LEAF are very welcome. And alongside LEAF, we've got industrial areas that we've allocated to clean energy development. So Power Park, as you mentioned earlier, is East Suffolk Council's plans to really reinforce that supply chain capability in our region. And buildings like Omnibus Energy are kind of a forefront to Power Park, and were established for that very reason, to attract or provide a location for businesses who needed to set up in the region with a easy in, easy lease, flexible arrangements, so they can move in fairly quick order. And when they've outgrown Omnibus Energy, they can move to a building in Power Park or in the O&M campus in Great Yarmouth, and really maintain those opportunities and maintain those jobs in the area.
You mentioned earlier about obviously the capability of more and bigger ships, and that means more people either on the ships or servicing the ships when they come in, or construction phases. That means more people around the town. That means more money going into shops and restaurants and cafes, and that slowly and surely, when the cafes, for example, we have don't they need more cafes, there's more opportunities, blah 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 blah, and outward and outward and outward and outward. which is really a really encouraging thing. You mention, and I slightly hesitate to do this because ask this question because it's not. It's generally I like to maintain an air of implacable, relentless optimism, but that pipeline of projects, to what extent is that now baked in and is going forward, and to what extent can we protect it? I suppose I'm saying from the vicissitudes of policymakers at the sort of towards the top end of the chain.
I think whatever the administration looks like and whatever direction it travels, there's been a stark realisation that energy security is equally as important as clean energy development. And I suppose what some of the developments we're talking about with offshore wind and with other clean energy technologies is it does bring a level of energy security and energy sovereignty that perhaps we haven't seen in the last sort of 50 years. So these projects are incredibly well advanced, and many are under construction and will be under construction in the coming months and years. And they provide a really reliable source of green energy to the UK. So these are opportunities that are too good to pass up for the UK government in terms of securing that energy supply and continuing our journey to less reliance on fossil fuels from other parts of the world.
Yeah. I mean, energy security, again, you've teed me up nicely there to talk about the British energy security strategy and its ambition to deliver 50 gigawatts of offshore wind by 2030, including 5 gigawatts of floating wind. Now, first of all, floating wind. I'm just really interested, how does that work?
So again, you know,
it's obviously it floats, but you know.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at what offshore wind in the UK has done primarily to date is what we call sort of fixed bottom foundation based structures. So they're either piled into the ground on a single monopile, or in deeper waters they're fixed to a jacket type system that you might see similar to the oil and gas sector, which makes good sense in a region like the southern North Sea, which is comparatively shallow to perhaps some other parts of the UK. So when you get into deeper waters, those technologies become less effective, and so technologies around floating systems become more attractive. So again, you know, the UK has got huge amounts of experience in structures that float in the water and gravity-based type things from the oil and gas sector. So there's a real opportunity with floating wind throughout the UK, and in effect the technology above the structure is very similar. So it's going to use very similar turbines and equipment and generating equipment, but when it comes to the structures that are being built, they need to be, you know, fairly robust and anchored and well maintained to work in those harsher environments, those deeper seas. But the beauty of them is that from a maintenance point of view and a mobility point of view, they can be moved and brought into shore for repair and upgrade and things. So we have the technologies to do that. You know, that this is nothing new, but it's at the moment it's a little bit more expensive because it's much like offshore wind. Fixed bottom offshore wind was perhaps 20 years ago, where, you know, the technologies were still being sort of finessed, but we've seen a rapid decline in the cost of offshore wind over that 20-year period, and likewise you'll see the same with floating offshore wind, probably from around 2030 onwards.
So what's Generate's role, the East of England's role, going to be in sort of pushing for a very healthy slug of that 50 gigawatt?
So we've already got quite a lot of it on our doorstep and planned in our doorstep. So as I mentioned earlier, the 4.6 is already there and generating on a day like today. We've got this sort of pipeline of already consented wind, which is something like 6.5, 6.7 gigawatts, and these extension projects. So there's already, we will play a significant role in that, and like I mentioned, it's cost effective and it's the planning processes are well down the road. So we will get a fairly significant share of that offshore wind growth off the coastlines of Norfolk, Suffolk and Essex. And again, you know, our supply chain is wide and varied, so it will work in other regions as well. You know, it can work with the Humber, it can work with the North East, it can work with Scotland. We've got that, you know, long-term relationship with other regions where we can bring together supply chains and we can really support that. And then when we touched on earlier, the export market, you know, that whole export market, offshore wind is widely seen as a global opportunity for businesses in our region, and we'll really work with those to bring those opportunities to our supply chain from a Generate perspective. Yeah, over at Orbis Energy, we've got a company here called 4C Offshore who do market intelligence for offshore wind just upstairs, and they working with us to identify those sort of 3 key regions. And you know, we know that they're the US market, we know that it's other parts of Europe, but also Southeast Asia and opportunities over there. So many of our companies are already doing work over there, but there's a whole lot more to come. So
yeah, I mean, I'm a firm believer that when other parts of particularly, you know, the UK and this region, but also wider across the UK, get investment, that it's not a defeat, it's an opportunity. So, and you think, so you're highlighting how that expertise is going out from this region to support others, which is great. Talk to me about hydrogen, because the very little I've come across about hydrogen is I thought I was learning something new when I found out this morning that there were 3 colours of hydrogen. Actually, you're telling me they're actually like a virtual paint chart, you know, of hydrogen, or there's nowhere you can go to get, you know, mix your own hydrogen. You know, I'd like it this colour, please. You know, teal. And the government's just opened a consultation process on transport storage of hydrogen. George Freeman MP, both before and during his time as Science Minister, an advocate of hydrogen. And so how do we sort of turn all this into, you know, a firm strategy? I know Sizewell's going to have hydrogen buses during its construction phase.
So again, hydrogen brings a new dimension to our energy system, not just in our region, but throughout the UK and globally indeed. And our role in that is going to be, you know, is really interesting, because as you mentioned, there's many different forms of hydrogen, and traditionally it's what we call grey hydrogen, which has been produced through gas and is quite carbon intensive, and a shift away from production of grey hydrogen into green hydrogen, which is from, as the name would suggest, green and renewable energy sources. Mm-hmm. And again, blue hydrogen, which some debate around at the moment in terms of production from gas and sequestration of the carbon that's produced, and opportunities there. But very much a focus on green hydrogen, and as you mentioned with Sizewell, opportunities to produce hydrogen from the high temperatures produced within a nuclear power station. So again, you know, real huge opportunities in Norfolk and Suffolk around transport and those hard to decarbonise areas. So if you can't electrify it, you can perhaps consider hydrogen for heavy goods vehicles, for agricultural machineries, for transport, heavy transport, but also for marine and shipping. So there's been some really exciting announcements from Scottish Power recently about the exploration of a hydrogen plant in Felixstowe, a green hydrogen plant in Felixstowe, which will produce significant amounts of green hydrogen. There's a project in Lowestoft which is currently going through the Net Zero Hydrogen Fund from a company called Conrad Energy, who are looking to build a hydrogen electrolyser within their flexible generation site. So here's an opportunity to reduce reliance on gas and blend with hydrogen, but also looking at other use cases. So it might be that perhaps local authorities could utilise some of that hydrogen to power refuse vehicles or gritting lorries, or local bus companies might want to use hydrogen, green hydrogen, to power their vehicles. Again, working with organisations like Hydrogen East, who are really exploring from a research perspective that interconnectivity and how we can realise those sort of sometimes disparate opportunities around hydrogen and coalescing them into a coherent strategy for our region are really exciting. And again, the technologies and the capabilities of our businesses and people within the region we're well positioned to provide a different offer to hydrogen compared to perhaps what a more industrialised area like the Humber might, where we're looking at high energy users. So our hydrogen story will be slightly different, but nevertheless very compelling as we move forward.
The government is looking at reducing consent time for wind, offshore wind, from that's currently up to 4 years down to 1 year. If successful, what do you see the impact of that being on the industry?
I mean, I think it provides certainty for developers, and it provides a confidence to their stakeholders that investment in the UK is likely to happen in reasonable timescales. And as you mentioned, we've seen planning takes significant time. These are hugely complex projects. We mustn't underestimate how complex they are. So they do take time, but that process certainly needs to be quicker if we want to hit those ambitions for 50 gigawatts of offshore wind by 2030, which is a real stretching target. So the planning process does need to be swift, and it needs to be and quick and efficient. So and also, we need more people to help with those planning consents. And again, there's areas of shortages there that the industry's picking up where we can build capability.
There's a project in Swaffham Prior in Cambridgeshire looking at community district heating, which is basically a village has a power station, effectively, that or it's sort of centralised boiler, I suppose is a better analogy, that the water leaves the boiler at about 75 degrees centigrade and returns at 73, having gone round, and heated the water in all the houses in the village. Is GENERATE and is the industry looking at sort of community scale renewable projects where local people can invest in their own sort of technology and power themselves locally? Yeah,
there's no doubt that those projects will form part of that kind of new energy mix, and GENERATE's role really is to highlight and identify those opportunities. But we work with a number of stakeholders, so we work closely with people like the Greater South East Energy Hub, who are really looking to support community organisations and see how they can build those opportunities for some of those places. So we're very much looking at it from an inward investment point of view. But when you start to build that level of scale and number of projects, then you create a really tangible opportunity for people and businesses. So the odd 1, 2 or 3 projects here and there aren't really enough to stimulate people to perhaps consider locating their business here. But when you start to scale them up and bring multiple projects to the table, then it becomes a little bit more exciting. So GENERATE will support in those areas where where those sort of growth areas. So we talk about solar, don't we, and talk about commercial scale solar, but also roof-based solar as well. When those projects ramp up to enough that create a real tangible opportunity, then that becomes interesting to the wider investment community as well.
Yeah. We are just under a week away from the EGA, East of England Energy Group's reception at the House of Commons, a building I am not unfamiliar with. What message will you be taking? And I accept this may be basically repeating something you've been saying for the past, some little while now. But what message will you be taking to the politicians, and what message would you have for those we perhaps need to reach out to a bit more to convince them, to show them the benefits of this part of the world and renewable energy?
So the overarching message is to Westminster is that here is a region, the east of England, that will be, in the next 10 years, producing up to a third of the UK's electricity requirement from our region through a range of forms of energy. And we want the government's support and ongoing support to help our communities to benefit from that opportunity and recognise the importance of the region in terms of the UK's wider energy system. So that's quite a clear message, quite a powerful message. And within it, there's a load of other stuff to unpack in terms of investment for our infrastructure, continued investment to look at skills and how we can bring local people into those opportunities and realise those opportunities on our doorstep. So they're our key messages, and we're quite excited about going down there as the new administration is rolling out.
Timing, yeah. I think one of my very, very oldest saws I like to saw is the importance of making it an offer to government and not an ask to government. And what an offer! Basically, the offer is colossal. The offer is amazing, and it is incredibly strong. You're going down there, and I wish I could come too, but you're going down there with an incredibly strong hand to play to government and saying, what a persuasive, detailed case to make, and all power to you, I must say, and I know that you guys are going to really bring it home for the East of England, as you are every day here. So, Ian Pease, thank you ever so much for your time today. It's great to be here and learn more about what you've been doing. So, thank you very much.
It's been great to meet you, Mike. Thank very much.
I'm very grateful to Ian for his time. Now, you don't sit in many boardrooms where you can see the waves crashing against the shore right outside the window, but you can at Orbis Energy. To find out more, go to generate-energy.co.uk. And now, life is like a box of chocolates, said Forrest Gump. Specifically, Quality Street. And what quality is found down your local high street? Does it have a crunchy coating but a soft centre? Is it liberally sprinkled with nuts and drizzled with sticky goodness? Crucially, is there a rich, hidden layer underneath? From Woodbridge to Wells next the sea, let's unwrap this edition of
CROWDSOURCERY.
Yes, CROWDSOURCERY. Let's continue to torture the chocolate box metaphor, whether a Loddon lollipop, a Lavenham lavender, or even a toffee Peterborough penny. Let's see where the best high street nestles. What? I first saw St Peter Street in Ipswich whilst recording for Eastern Promise. Now, it has an amazing feel to it, with no change to be seen, and I'm very keen to get back there and visit it again. I also love the high street in Sheringham. Lots of posh new cafes, alongside classic ice cream and donut parlours, with the occasional chip shop. Don't forget the discount book and jigsaw centre, and Starling's toy shop, out of which my wife Sally has had to drag me, my daughter, her, on many an occasion. Coincidentally, you can also find a branch of Starling's on the High Street in Holt, a town centre that's a particular favourite of Ros Bird, CEO of Anglia Innovation Partnership. Ros also declares St John Street in Bury St Edmunds a further favourite, and there is lots of support for that. Indeed, Richard Powell OBE, Environmental and Charity Advisor and Independent Chair, concurs with Bury St Edmunds and says, "I also like Halesworth, great little market town and a good art centre as well." He continues, "There's Southwold for people watching and is awesome, but also good for pies and takeaway lunch provisions and boiled sweets." Pies. Richard, hailing from the metropolitan borough of Wigan, as I do, you have said the magic word. I shall hie me to Southwold at the double. Suffolk's High Street proving very popular this week, with 2 a.m. problem solver and innovation coach Neil Griffin recommending Woodbridge. Lots of new independent shops, plus new restaurants that have opened. Parking is also cheap too, which really helps. great bakeries with 2 Magpies and Honey and Harvey's. A further vote for Halesworth comes from Tom Abbott of Green Easy. So it seems clear that Suffolk and North Norfolk are the places to be for a top-notch quality high street. Go on, have an explore, and tell them that Eastern Promise sent you. So that's it for episode 43 of Eastern Promise. I'm taking a 2-week break to refresh, renew, and to cover Sink the City in Norwich next week, as well as to interview Cambridge MP Daniel Zeichner. However, like Douglas MacArthur, I shall return, on the 1st of December to be exact, in the company of Urban XR founder and all-round lovely chap, James Lee Burgess. We'll be touring the award-winning Digitech factory at City College Norwich, and I have a go at augmented reality. Keep your eardrums ready for that one. My thanks to Ian Pease and all the team at Generate for making me feel so welcome. Thank you too to everyone who submitted press releases to the Eastern Promise news desk of newsiness. Thank you as ever to Engineer 49, Pharaoh of the Fader, Viscount of Volume, King of the Cable. But thank you most of all to you for listening. I truly am delighted to have your company. I'll be back in 2 weeks' time, but until then, bye for now. What?